I vow to defend imperial doctrine with my life.
The morning bell tolled, stirring Yahshi from slumber. When he felt himself sinking deeper into the cozy embrace of his pillow, he tore the blankets away and rubbed his eyes open.
This doesn't look like home.
The ceiling that normally greeted him every morning was made of wooden panels, but this one was seamless and decorated with thin outlines of 4-petaled flowers. He pushed himself into a seated position and spotted a second bed across the room, perfectly made without a single wrinkle in the blankets.
Right. I'm at the academy now.
The floor chilled his feet, and he pulled his knees up in confusion. His morning routine was so mundane that even the simplest of changes threw him off guard. Leaving his bed unmade, Yahshi changed into his uniform. He frowned at the sight of his disheveled hair in the mirror, rogue strands fighting to escape. No matter how much he tried to flatten them with his hands, they refused to obey.
I've been far too reckless. If I keep lying and sneaking around, the Guardians will lose trust in me.
He brushed his teeth in the restroom with toothpaste that tasted sweeter than sugar cane. A soft, bristled brush steered his hair into its rightful place.
Father was right about being patient. If I'm going to keep an eye on the Guardians, I need to do so from a distance, without drawing unnecessary attention to myself.
He splashed his face with water like any other morning, but the water here wasn't cold. It was lukewarm and strangely unrefreshing. When he entered the lobby, he found VELL and KEIYO sitting next to each other on a sofa.
Okay, so for the last step, you bring it up through the big loop and then push it down through the small loop. Then you just wiggle around the top part until it's tight enough.
He demonstrated with his own tie.
KO,
What?
you're explaining this horribly.
Well, how am I supposed to explain it? Tying a tie is one of those things that you just have to do, you know?
Yahshi closed the door behind him, catching their attention.
Morning, Yahshi.
Morning.
KEIYO waved his hand in the air, bringing VELL's eyes back to him.
Do you need me to show you again?
I can remember. Thanks.
Yahshi was about to head to the staircase when the door to room 2 swung open. SUNNA trailed behind QUAX, entering the lobby.
That's the strangest thing.
SUNNA shut the door behind him.
I can help you look for it if you want.
No, don't bother. It just doesn't make sense. I've never lost my marbles before.
He's been on about this all night. Hey, QUAX! Maybe someone stole it just to hear you say that you lost your marbles.
Very funny.
QUAX crossed his arms, and his eyes jumped from KEIYO to the girl sitting next to him.
Well, you did it.
Did what?
Her face didn't read as guilty or oblivious. QUAX pointed to her tie, and Yahshi grinned.
Your tie.
KO helped me.
I saved her, is what I did. You guys see Commander Roz yesterday? He looked personally offended when he saw her without a tie.
There's probably some kind of unresolved trauma there.
Also, VELL, I wanted to apologize for the sparring match yesterday. I should have let you in. I already earned my pin, so it's not like I had anything to lose. I just didn't think it through beforehand.
Don't worry about it.
Yahshi chuckled, and QUAX squinted at him.
What?
It's nothing.
No. What's so amusing, Yahshi? Are you laughing at my eye?
The humor drained from Yashi's face.
Of course not. I feel awful about your eye. In fact, I think you should probably have Dr. BLIMMERY take a look.
That's not a bad idea. It is a bit more swollen than yesterday. Are you in pain?
I'm feeling just fine, SUNNA. Thank you. I'm just waiting for Yahshi to explain what he finds so funny.
I said it's nothing.
Did you take my marble?
Again with the accusations?
Let's not jump to conclusions now.
How would he even do that, QUAX?
QUAX approached Yahshi and stood tall, looming over him. The life drained from his eyes until they resembled his sister's. With one disdainful stare, QUAX sent Yahshi the message that he didn't belong in the program, that he couldn't win because he wasn't in the game at all. Yahshi could no longer suppress his own resentment.
Did you do it or not?
I'll answer your question if you tell me how you got that black eye.
VELL's footsteps knocked Yahshi and QUAX out of their staring contest. She made her way down the staircase. Yahshi shot QUAX a final glance before rushing from the lobby.
Hey, VELL, wait!
When he caught up to her halfway down the staircase, she wouldn't look at him.
Is something wrong?
I can handle myself.
Yahshi descended the stairs, eyes on his boots.
QUAX just... It was ironic how he was acting all condescending towards you when you're the one who stole his marble.
He can think whatever he likes.
Don't you think you're letting him underestimate you for no reason?
This may be a shock to you, but we're not all here to play games.
Yahshi paused at the bottom of the staircase, watching her long hair sway as she walked ahead of him into the dining hall. He waited a few moments before following her inside. Their first breakfast consisted of eggs with melted cheese on a bed of rice. As he grabbed a tray, VELL headed toward an empty table, clearly intent on eating in isolation. He scanned the room for a different lone trainee to sit with, and his eyes locked on his roommate. Although he wasn't keen on sharing a meal with Pinto after hearing his thoughts on Dice, avoiding him might make things awkward between them in the evenings, so he swallowed his pride and joined him.
Where were you this morning?
Professor Embre said something about a library on the 3rd floor. I woke up early to do some research.
Pinto swallowed a bite and raised his chin, giving him a clear view of his sickeningly dull face. Yahshi nearly dropped his spoon.
You look a bit tired today.
I'll feel better later. I'm not a morning person, that's all.
Then why did you wake up before the bell?
Because I'm a motivated person, it's truly a cursed combination. And to make matters worse, the coffee in the dispenser is so weak it might as well be jasmine tea.
Pinto finished his eggs and slid the bowl aside, leaving the rice untouched.
If the Guardians have a problem with caffeine-dependent trainees, they could just say so. They don't have to play cruel mind games with me.
Pinto raised his ceramic mug to take a sip, only to discover there was no coffee left. He set the mug down with a sigh.
Sorry, I'm being ridiculous, aren't I? To be honest with you, I couldn't sleep a wink last night. I kept replaying VELL's match from yesterday in my head, and I couldn't figure out how she managed to get that marble out of his pocket so discreetly. I thought I'd read a book in the library about pickpocketing to ease my curiosity, but apparently it's not something you just find written tutorials for.
Why does it bother you so much?
I have no idea. Sometimes I come across things I don't understand, and I feel this itch to figure out what I'm missing. And the puzzle is all I can focus on. That probably doesn't make any sense, but...
No, it does. I know exactly what you mean.
The wooden floors and furniture in the lecture hall gave the space a more rustic feel than other rooms in the building. 10 desks, each with 2 chairs, faced a blackboard at the front of the room. Above it hung a framed portrait of Emperor Vakoi, and beneath it was a long desk behind which Professor Embre stood.
Yahshi!
He halted with a flinch.
You're in the last row, far left.
Thank you, Professor.
He made his way down the aisle and sat next to QUAX's freckled roommate.
Looks like we're stuck together. It's Yahshi, right? From the lobby earlier?
Yeah, that's me.
You gave him that black eye, didn't you?
Yahshi cringed.
Well...
I figured. But it's all right. I won't tell.
The bell rang.
Good morning. I'm glad to see everyone found their way here on time. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The chairs scraped the floor as they stood and locked their eyes on the Emperor's portrait.
I pledge my allegiance to the Vakoi Empire.
Professor Embre nodded, and they took their seats again.
There's a stereotype in the Guardian Force that professors are stiff and pessimistic. Which is true, and rightfully so. Those qualities are necessary for the Empire's safety. To prepare for the worst-case scenarios, we must first imagine them and live with the unfortunate knowledge that they are possible. Today, we'll be discussing our potential worst-case scenarios involving the Underground, our biggest threat since the Atheris War. This Eastern rebel organization goes against the very core of our Imperial doctrine. Our division has been tracing them in the 12 years since the war, and we believe they're planning something unimaginable.
She paced back and forth behind her desk. The remnant specks of white chalk on the blackboard resembled stars, and the image of Professor Embre floating in the night sky made Yahshi chuckle. A few boys glanced at him, killing his humor. Professor Embre came to a stop.
Yahshi, you seem to be having fun back there. And I have reason to believe that you're extremely talented at imagining worst-case scenarios. Why don't you brainstorm a potential problem we might face with the underground?
Yahshi folded his hands in his lap.
I mean, they're still...
Stand!
He stood.
They're still loyal to...
Speak up!
Limbo chuckled from across the room.
The rebels in the underground are still loyal to Emperor Atheris, despite his death during the war. So maybe they're planning to strike back in his name.
And what might that entail?
Some theorize the Easterners in underground are the same Easterners who raided our towns during the war. If they really are one and the same, then we can assume they might raid us again.
And what did the Eastern Raiders do during those raids?
She asked the question as though the answer weren't painfully obvious.
What?
What did they do, Yahshi?
Well...
He's spineless.
Pinto shook his head.
Professor, do we really need to...
Quiet! Everyone! Yahshi?
I don't know.
But you do.
I don't!
Answer the question.
SUNNA looked up at him.
Just answer her, Yahshi.
Okay, during the war, a group of Easterners traveled west to raid our towns. They didn't kill anyone, but they always left a mark.
Professor Embre crossed her arms.
What kind of mark?
I don't...
What kind of mark, Yahshi?
Eyes! They break into homes and gouge out people's eyes.
Professor Embre smiled lightly.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Yahshi scoffed and took a seat.
It's like she's out to get you.
She definitely is.
The war may be over, but we can't let our guards down. We are never in a state of peace as long as the underground exists. No one should have to face an Eastern raid again. And we must prepare for the worst-case scenario where...
I don't think it's just a worst-case scenario, Professor.
Pinto stood of his own will.
What else would the false converts be channeling information to the East for? The underground is plotting something horrible, and it's only a matter of time before they take action. If they took my eye last time, they could be planning something even worse next.
QUAX turned in his seat to face Pinto.
The false converts? That situation was wrapped up years ago.
And what other schemes could be operating without our knowledge? For all we know, most of them are undetected. Now's not the time to risk letting converts like Dice into the Academy.
The trainees shifted in their seats, their attention drawn to Dice and the yellow bandana wrapped around his head. He smiled sheepishly before glancing over his shoulder and meeting Yashi's gaze. As they stared into each other's eyes, Yahshi felt a strange certainty that Dice knew he was a convert too. But he couldn't be sure if it was just his imagination. After all, Easterners and Westerners didn't look any different, and he had never spoken to Dice before. Yahshi broke eye contact with the convert to glare at Pinto. Shaming Dice behind his back was one thing, but to humiliate him in the middle of class was another. Pinto was more than prejudiced. He was malicious, and he used that pathetic eye patch to justify his behavior.
And if there is a convert amongst us, so what? The Guardians are thorough. The spies have been dealt with. Let's defend ourselves from the underground, not our own people.
Professor Embre leaned against the blackboard with a grin, reveling in their argument.
Well, I sure know you'd never last in the research division. You're far too trusting.
Oh, really? I'm too trusting? Perhaps you should consider how you're currently rooming in a quarter with your worst enemy.
Pinto closed his mouth. Every trainee except him turned to face the back of the lecture room, where Yahshi sat next to SUNNA, dumbfounded. He wasn't sure what bothered him more, that Pinto finally knew the truth, or that QUAX had revealed it. As Professor Embre went over the different roles in the research division, Yahshi waited for Pinto to look back at him, but he never did. Easterners from the Atheris Empire had raided his home during the war, and perhaps one of Yashi's distant relatives had done the gouging. They could never know for sure.
Hey.
SUNNA tapped Yahshi on the shoulder.
If it makes you feel any better, my best friend back home is a convert too.
Stand wherever you'd like. 2 per table. That's the only rule.
Located on the highest floor of the academy, the glass-encased lab was more of a rooftop conservatory than the sterile room Yahshi associated with the word lab. The transparent, dome-shaped ceiling blended smoothly into the glass walls, allowing light from the morning clouds to nurture the many potted plants inside. A massive tree, rooted in the floor, towered over Dr. BLIMMERY's desk at the opposite end of the room. As Yahshi admired its blossoming red flowers, he couldn't help but feel as though the tree deserved to grow freely in the woods, far outside of this glass entrapment. He planted himself behind one of the empty lab tables at random. The 10 tables were taller than the desks in the lecture hall, designed for standing, not sitting.
Wow, QUAX, that eye is looking impressive today. You'd better put some ice on that thing. Let me grab some from the infirmary.
Thank you, Doctor.
As Dr. Bllimmery left the room, a trainee appeared next to Yahshi.
Hey, I'm Dice.
Hi.
Yahshi offered him a brief smile before returning his focus to the tree, not in the mood for a conversation.
Pinto has never been easy to get along with.
Oh.
Dice tightened the bandana around his head.
Do you know what part of the East your father's from?
He doesn't really talk about it.
A moment passed before Yahshi faced him with raised brows.
Wait. Why my father?
Huh?
Why my father specifically?
Dr. Bllimmery returned with a bag in his hands.
I've secured the ice. Can you catch it?
QUAX raised his palms.
I can try.
The trainees gasped as Dr. Bllimmery chucked the bag of ice across the room.
Oh, it's coming fast.
QUAX caught the bag easily.
Phew.
Nice one.
I'm surprised you saw it coming with an eye like that.
QUAX lifted the cold bag to his face.
Shut it, KO.
Dr. Bllimmery walked down the aisle and came to a stop at his desk.
All right, let's get to business. Who can tell me what the medical division does? Any hands?
He took a seat.
How about you with the patch?
Pinto flinched, and a few boys chuckled.
The medical division is tasked with the responsibility to preserve life. They manage the largest hospital on the island, which is located in the heart of Vakoi City. It's also where all the major medical discoveries and advancements are made. If it weren't for the medical guardians, dozens of the royal family members would have died young, including several of our late emperors.
Students grew restless as Pinto blabbered relentlessly about the medical division. VELL leaned forward with her chin in her palm, and Dice started to tap his fingers against the table in an irritating pattern. Limbo rubbed his bird tattoo with a scowl.
I hate this class already.
His brother scolded him.
Keep your voice down.
Dice, why did you ask about my father?
Just forget it, Yahshi.
Pinto paused for a breath before continuing.
Medical is also responsible for—
All right, I'll cut you off there.
Thank the stars.
Dice laughed at Limbo's comment, and Pinto huffed.
I may look ridiculously young, but believe it or not, I worked in the Vakoi City Hospital for over 30 years before transferring to teach here at the Academy. The medical division is the most important Guardian division there is.
All 3 divisions are equally important. They work together to—
I was joking. Lighten up, kid.
Dr. Bllimmery flashed Pinto a disturbed look before smiling at the others.
Like Pinto explained, medical runs our hospital in Vakoi City, but they also assist with tool production and development. Take this dagger, for example.
He reached into his overcoat to retrieve it.
This tool was crafted by a Guardian, and on the bottom of its handle you'll notice a familiar emblem. Any Guardian tools marked with this 4-petaled flower are laced with a serum sourced from a rare plant grown in the lab. Can anyone tell me what plant I'm speaking of?
Pinto raised his hand, and Dr. Bllimmery sighed.
Yes, you again.
You mean poison, Doctor?
That's incorrect terminology in medical. Poison implies detrimental intent. We refer to it as serum, or by the plant's name, which is—
Pinto emphasized his raised hand.
Anyone besides Pinto?
QUAX and a few other boys raised their hands next, and Dr. Bllimmery dragged his dagger through the air as though he were writing calligraphy. The blade pointed from one boy to the next before finally landing on VELL, who hadn't volunteered to answer.
How about you? What plant is the serum sourced from?
Belladonna. The plant has beautiful flowers, but every part is deadly. Roots, leaves, petals, berries. With enough extracted poison on a blade, even a small cut is fatal.
Serum?
Serum.
Dr. Bllimmery nodded as he tucked his dagger away.
And what would happen if you were to simply touch the plant without gloves?
I'm not sure. I assume it wouldn't be fatal, but it might irritate the skin. Cause a rash, maybe.
Perfectly stated. Belladonna is a powerful and discreet tool for defense, but it's also dangerous in the wrong hands. That's why it's imperative that only Guardians have access to it, hence our Academy's name.
Dr. Blimmery stood, grabbed a potted plant, and placed it on his desk.
This right here is a potted Belladonna plant. It doesn't look all too special, right? Just an ordinary bush with violet flowers and a few ink-colored berries. If you were to see this plant in the wild, you might consider it harmless. You might even be enticed to eat one of the cute little berries. But this plant is a major two-faced liar. Eating about a dozen berries could kill a grown man, and our concentrated serum does the job much more effectively.
He plucked a berry with his bare hands and held it up for everyone to see.
Before I go over the different parts of the plant, does anyone have any questions?
Yahshi raised his hand without thinking.
Yes, Yahshi?
If Belladonna caused rashes, why had Dr. Blimmery touched a berry without gloves?
I can't help wonder why. No, I can't say that.
Confronting the Guardians with too many questions would give off the impression that he still didn't trust them.
Why what?
Never mind, Doctor. I figured it out.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Dr. Blimmery set the berry on his desk.
Well, all right then.
As the Guardian introduced different parts of the plant, gripping them with his gloveless fingers, Yahshi's gaze drifted to VELL. She was offering Dr. Blimmery her undivided attention as though she were genuinely eager to learn, as though she had joined the program for more than the family pension. Yahshi grabbed a tray and marched toward QUAX's table. When he reached them, KEIYO was in the middle of telling his roommates a story.
I swear, no one cared at all about me. And the second I start training for my selection, I'm an instant lady magnet. It's like the stars are aligned against me.
He trailed off after noticing Yahshi's arrival.
Hey, QUAX. I just wanted to say thank you.
What for?
Yahshi couldn't tell if QUAX was asking the question genuinely or not.
Look, I spoke up because your roommate is a judgmental prick, and that's all there is to it.
Yahshi gripped his tray harder.
You're a piece of my past, Yahshi. I don't have the energy for any distractions right now. I'm here to graduate.
KEIYO's smile morphed into a cringe.
Ouch.
SUNNA nudged him in the side.
QUAX.
QUAX scooted his chair away from SUNNA with a huff. He broke eye contact with Yahshi, jamming his spoon into a side dish of beans.
Just stay away from me until you get filtered.
The room fell silent, and Yahshi turned his back to QUAX's table.
That was too far.
He can take it.
Dice gestured for Yahshi to join him and the Brackle twins, but he ignored the invitation and stormed to an empty table. He slammed his tray down as he took a seat, nearly spilling over a glass of beet juice. Chatter eventually filled the dining hall again, trainees moving on from QUAX's outburst. Yahshi took a single bite of salad before pushing his tray away. When a shadow cast over him, he raised his chin with widened eyes.
Hey, can I join you?
You don't have to ask.
Pinto's lip twitched before he took a seat across from him. The roommates ate together in silence, occasionally making eye contact but never speaking. A friendship between Yahshi and Pinto went against all logic, and yet, for a reason Yahshi couldn't identify, Pinto had chosen to share a table with him, and Yahshi had chosen to be okay with it. Belladonna, Book 1, Nightshade Academy. Written and narrated by Torrefranca. Produced by Torrefranca and Wilson Hensley. Edited and mastered by Juan Pablo Diaz.
How did we get here? Something went wrong. We worked hard for this life that we don't want it all.
Cover art by Mad Studio. Score by Gita Puspita Asri. Theme song composed and produced by James Sinclair-Stott. Starring Jason Brown, Anthony Andreas Echeverri, Melissa White, Alex Bowie, Patrick Viersba, Julia Ristow, David John Bors, Connor Blunck, Kody Kiehl, Ellie Chua, Ben Autry, Walter Mack.
If it's really true that the sky weeps with us, if it's really true that heroes live in stars.
Featuring the voices of Gwyneth Evans, Jeff Rosenau, Philip Kryanoff, Lucas Hensley, Levi Titus, Angie Eggers, Willem Degar, Allison Prophet, Maria Palmo. Nightshade Academy is produced in association with Lost Island Press.